And now, cutting through your typical media nonsense and offering you a rational and unbiased perspective on current events and life in Tampa Bay. He's a successful entrepreneur, published author, top listing agent, a real estate and finance expert that goes to bat for you every day as a consumer advocate. Your host and the consumer quarterback, Brandon Rhymes.
And welcome to the Consumer Quarterback Show. We love to help you win in any marketplace. That's always our goal, to be a consumer advocate and help you as an informed consumer out there. We got a great lineup for you today. Attorney Anthony Rickman on the program, a criminal defense attorney here locally in Tampa Bay. We also have Brittney Griner, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer, Super Bowl winner. He played at K-State, by the way. Lou Groza Award winner with Lifeguard Imaging on the Consumer Quarterback Show. Brittney Griner coming up later on in the program. And we want you to save our hotline number, 813-917-1894. Just give us a call or a text, anything you see today. If you want any support, you need any connections, 813-917-1894. Just call or text the hotline. Online at consumerqb.com. And it would mean the world to us as well if you go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to the YouTube channel or download our podcast, iTunes podcast, Spotify. You can find the Consumer Quarterback Show podcast out there as well. Now, we always like to feature our real estate listings live on air. If you're selling real estate properties, you're leaving money on the table if you're not listing with the Platinum MVP team at Keller Williams Realty. 3879 Nighthawk Drive in Palm Harbor. This is a opportunity to own a 3-bedroom, 2-bath property, almost 1,300 square feet at Nighthawk Drive in Palm Harbor. You've got a community pool, large backyard, the fenced-in backyard as well, walk-in shower, and an open concept floor plan. Great opportunity. 3879 Nighthawk Drive in Palm Harbor in beautiful Pinellas County, Florida. I also have 2817 Gulf City Road. This one's over in Ruskin. This is a development opportunity. So look at that beautiful photography, compliments of Fabre Frameworks. 2817 Gulf City Road, 23 acres MOL. It's a $1.8 million listing of ours. Can be subdivided and developed. Deep water access, Gulf of Mexico access on the Little Manatee River. You can see all of our listings at PlatinumMVPteam.kw.com.
And yeah, I'm raising my glass to those saving our ass overseas.
Raising our glass to those overseas. Thank you so much for all you're doing out there, all the veterans. We greatly appreciate you. All right, Attorney Anthony Rickman, welcome in, sir.
Thanks for having me back.
My pleasure. Let's jump right into it. Big breaking news as of today. Maybe late yesterday. It was Brittney Griner. We got a WNBA player that hates America, caught with, I guess it was a weed pen or something like that.
It's a joke charge. It's called what it was. It's a BS charge. Russia's holding her. She's sentenced for 10 years in prison for having a vape pen.
Wow.
It's an extremely ridiculous sentence. It's an extreme sentence. End of the day, she did violate Russian law. End of the day, she did commit a crime in Russia. The sentence that she was given did not meet the crime that she was convicted of. It's called what it is. And really, here in the United States, that's legal in most states now.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, she did commit a crime in Russia. And because of let's call it her actions, she committed the crime. She admitted to it.
Yeah.
We've had to give up a terrorist,
Yeah.
the harbinger of death. I forgot his nickname.
We didn't have to.
No, we didn't
did,
have to,
right?
but we did.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the price that we as a country now in a society have paid for her stupidity, call it what it is. Went to a foreign country in Russia with illegal drugs.
Yep.
We're trying to leave with illegal drugs. We've now given up a person who was sentenced to 25 years in prison for being an arms dealer, giving arms to the Taliban. He was responsible for the deaths of who knows how many people.
Right.
And our president just said, hey, here you go. We'll trade you for a basketball player.
Yeah.
And the question is, if she wasn't Brittney Griner, if she wasn't a basketball player,
right,
would the president of the United States care?
No.
Would the president of the United States give up this piece back to Russia to go back and do whatever he's doing? And at the end of the day, we exchanged this individual, this terrorist, this murderer, this mass murderer, for a basketball star, and we still have people sitting in Russian jail. One such person in the middle, a distinguished member of the Marine Corps is sitting in jail under some BS charge of espionage that they can't prove, and we gave up this person for Brittney Griner when you have an American hero sitting in custody in Russia serving 16 years.
Well, it reminds me of the Bergdahl case too.
Yeah.
Remember the guy? He was low level something or other, and then they gave up a lot of big time hitters for him.
Without a doubt. We used to have a policy as a country. We don't negotiate with terrorists. We don't negotiate with terrorist countries. Look what Russia's doing. Russia's still involved in the invasion of Ukraine. They're killing innocent people in Ukraine, and we're bargaining with them, giving up terrorists, arms dealers for basketball players.
It's ridiculous.
It doesn't make sense. Look, and I'm not saying Brittney Griner should be convicted or should go to prison for 10 years. That's not what we're saying here.
Yeah.
But we're saying here is that what we gave up for her and what is still there in Russia in custody, American hero, a member of the Marine Corps, really it's not a fair exchange. Call it what it is.
It's not equity like they talk about equity all the time.
No.
Anthony Rickman here on the Consumer Quarterback Show, criminal defense attorney Anthony Rickman. I think one of the biggest stories in the history of the planet is Twitter right now. Twitter files, Elon Musk. He's coming out and opening up these files, and the left is going crazy. What do you mean free speech? We can't have free speech. We may not win an election if we don't do. But you look at the collusion that was there between the federal governments, these alphabet agencies, and I'm just going to play a quick clip here about Jim Baker.
Elon Musk says that former FBI General Counsel James Baker, who was working at Twitter until he was exited on Tuesday, tried to keep internal Twitter records from journalists. The news comes after FBI testimony revealed that the Bureau held weekly meetings with social media executives leading up to the 2020 presidential election.
Daily Wire culture reporter Megan Basham is here to give us the details on both developments. So, Megan, before we get to the FBI testimony, the latest news in the Twitter files is that James Baker, a controversial FBI figure, was actively withholding Twitter documents from journalists. Who is making that accusation, and what is it based on?
Yeah, well, as hard as it is to imagine, Elon Musk says he was not aware that Baker was still working for Twitter. Baker took a job in late 2021 after he resigned from the FBI.
So, anyways, we'll cut it there. But yeah, it's open. We're seeing it. This is unprecedented. And then, of course, Trump came out and said, "Hey, well, this shows that the election was rigged. This shows, of course, they misconstrued some of the things he said about the Constitution, incidentally. But let's just start there with the government.
The purpose of the press is a check on the government. The purpose of the press, purpose of you, the reason you're here,
right?
The reason I'm talking, it's free speech, but also the freedom of the press was created to check the government, to make public, to bring sunshine. We have sunshine laws of what the government is doing behind the scenes.
Right.
And now we have a circumstance where it comes out where the government is controlling the narrative.
Right.
The government's controlling what is released to Twitter. The government is having a say in what gets posted, what gets censored from Twitter. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem. I mean, it's a problem. It's suppression of free speech. It's suppression of free thought.
Yep.
And it flies in the face of what our founders created this country on.
Absolutely.
And that is the freedom of the press, the ability for Twitter to publish, for people to say what they feel. And now when you have a circumstance where not only is the government controlling the narrative by censoring what Twitter is releasing, you also have the government actually involved with a private company.
Yeah.
And look, for 4 years when Trump was in office, policy was made, statements were made on Twitter. Twitter became the platform before he was banned.
That's right.
Twitter became the platform where we would hear the president of the United States speaking first.
Yep.
He did away with his weekly press conferences, daily press conferences, and he really relied on social media, relied on Twitter to be the voice of our country.
Yep.
Where what he was saying on Twitter became policy, became something the other countries were reading and seeing. And now we see in a circumstance where Twitter is suppressing intentionally because of what the FBI is telling them to do, is filtering what is actually released.
Yep.
And now you have Elon Musk coming in and saying, we're not going to do that. We're going to create an open platform on Twitter. We're going to allow people to say what they want, the initial nature of what Twitter was created for. And now what is Elon Musk doing? He's subjecting himself to scrutiny. He's the guy who everyone hates now. He's the guy who, he sends out a memo, hey, I want you to work harder. No, we're all quitting because we don't want to work harder. Let's call it, now Elon Musk is public enemy number one. I saw now they're trying to investigate Elon Musk because of something, testing on animals. Now is he going to be the target of
the next fall guy?
Next fall guy.
The same Mar-a-Lago.
Is he Mar-a-Lago? Is he Donald Trump? Is he their new Donald Trump? Because look, Donald Trump is stepping back. Although he's declared he's running for president, we're not hearing Donald Trump a lot right now. But we're now hearing Elon Musk because Elon Musk is that mouthpiece, contrary to what the other side is saying. And it's been like this for several years. I believe in free speech as long as your speech is the same as mine. Yeah. That's not what free speech is.
And by the way, if it's a certain type, we're going to just call it hate speech, and we're going to double, triple I mean, what is it? It's double or triple. Like if they throw hate into the crime, it's like big time.
Look, there is hate speech out there. But just because you disagree with somebody's position doesn't make it hateful.
Exactly.
Just because you have your own values and morals doesn't make you an anti somebody,
right.
Whether it be anti-gay, anti-Semite, whatever it may be.
Right.
Just because you don't agree doesn't make you against, doesn't make you anti. It gives you the right. We're American citizens. We have the right to disagree.
That's right.
I walk into a courtroom every day, and people disagree with me.
Yeah.
Okay, probably rightfully so in a lot of the circumstances. But because I'm advocating a position, or because we're doing something, doesn't mean I'm against you. It means I just think differently.
Let me ask you this question, though, because this is what it ends up coming down to this. Is there going to be accountability? Is there going to be liability? Are people going to get held accountable? And I know you can't predict that, but what are we at on a legal standpoint here on a lot of this stuff?
Well, look, I wouldn't be surprised that there has to be some sort of oversight. There has to be some sort of investigation as to what role the government played in suppressing free speech, free thought, especially on a platform that is being used by government officials.
Right.
And if you're only putting out one side and the government is suppressing or filtering the other side that's going back, that's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a violation of speech. I wouldn't be surprised if we see congressional hearings. We see, now that we know that the FBI is involved to some extent, if we do see this being brought more to light.
Yeah, absolutely. It's challenging. It's an interesting situation, to say the least, and probably one of the most, the biggest purchase ever, of course, dollar-wise and as far as figuratively speaking. I mean, it's one of the biggest purchases in the history, turning a left-wing echo chamber into now a free, open-air space, bringing the president back on. By the way, on that Twitter story, Kayleigh McEnany was immediately withdrawn. I mean, here's the spokesperson for the White House being shut down by a private company.
But should it be like that? I mean, we shouldn't even be here in the first place. I mean, if people are even real on Twitter, that's the other issue. What's real? And what's bots? What's fake? What's Russian?
Right.
What's our own government? What's people just a big majority of other people who agree on one thing putting out bots. So first you have to distinguish what's real speech. Yeah. And then, should we even be in a circumstance where Twitter gets canceled? People gets canceled because they disagree. Yeah. It is a public platform. It's a platform where people should be able to say and do what they want to some limit. Obviously, you shouldn't incite violence. You shouldn't broadcast hate. There is bad people who do bad things, who say bad things, and those people should be censored. But to what extent is there censorship? Because you disagree with somebody, does it make it hate speech? No. Yeah. Because you believe differently, does it make you a racist, a homophobic? No. Right. It just means that you believe differently. And Twitter, or all these public platforms, should have the ability to people to say what they think without fear of repercussions.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you about the Seminole Heights serial killer coming up, as well as holiday parties, DUIs, and some of the involvement there coming up here on the Consumer Quarterback Show. Criminal defense attorney Anthony Rickman here in studio with us. And later on in the program, we have woman hands out hundreds of stuffed animals to seniors in need of Christmas cheer. That's our feel-good story of the day as well, coming up. We'll be right back here on the Consumer Quarterback Show, consumerqb.com.
Hey everybody, it's the Captain, Matt Bruce, and you're listening to my buddy Brandon Rhymes, a consumer quarterback. Sell, Brandon, sell.
To get in touch with Brandon, call 813-917-1894.
Brandon is Tampa Bay's #1 consumer advocate for real estate and financial advice. Call Brandon today at 813-917-1894.
And we're back. Brandon Rhymes here, Consumer Quarterback Show, Platinum MVP team, Keller Williams, 1618 West De Leon Street in South Tampa. One of our hot listings from the Platinum MVP team at Keller Williams Realty. This is a corner unit, Mediterranean Palace, beautiful townhome, 3 bedrooms, 3.5 bath, 2,266 square feet, multi-story townhome with large bedrooms, vaulted ceiling, stainless steel appliances, and many updates. Great opportunity to see our real estate listings at platinummvpteam.kw.com.
This is God's country.
All right, we got attorney Anthony Rickman in the house, criminal defense attorney. So we like to get these updates periodically. What's latest with this Seminole Heights serial killer case?
Well, right now, Seminole Heights serial killer is set for trial. It's going to be tried sometime in the summer of 2023. So next summer, we'll actually see the case go to trial. And ultimately, the defense decided, initially they wanted 4 separate trials, 1 for each homicide, 1 for each murder. Ultimately now, because the courts are allowing evidence of all those other cases to come into every single case, the defense decided that they'll accept 1 trial for all cases. So all cases are going to be tried together. They'll be tried sometime in the summer of 2023. Right now, they're going through some motion hearings, motions to exclude certain evidence, motions to keep the prosecutors from saying certain things. the defense, for instance, wants the prosecutor not to be allowed to say the word serial killer, not to call him serial killer, say things like that, because obviously it taints the jury pool.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the government's probably not going to contest a motion like that because they want a clean trial.
Right.
They don't want any appellate issues. And calling somebody a serial killer when you're being tried at the same time for 4 separate homicides obviously has the opportunity to taint the jury pool. So we're seeing some litigation going back and forth, but at the end of the day, the case is going to be tried sometime in the summer of 2023, and it's going to be tried all together. And I think as a matter of strategy, the reason the defense did that is because when you're looking at the death penalty, you have to convince all 12 jurors, number one, of guilt or innocence, and then number two, whether or not to sentence this individual to death. If you have 4 separate death penalty trials, and you have 4 different juries deciding life or death, it's more. All you need is one jury to have him 1 out of 4 to find him, guilty of murder and then guilty in the penalty phase and agree to execute him. So I think the defense made a good strategic move. If you believe they should keep him alive, as a defense attorney, you want to keep your client alive, obviously. So to keep him alive as a strategic move, the defense opted for 1 trial, and I think they did so for purposes of the penalty phase, not to be able to show their hand in all these different trials on what they're doing to save his life in every trial. Do it once. All it takes is 1 juror. Look, we saw Nicholas Cruz, the person who, in my opinion, the death penalty was created for.
Was that a Parkland shooter?
Parkland shooter.
Yeah.
A mass murderer walks in and kills 17 innocent children.
Jeez.
And they spared him the death penalty because all it took was 1 juror. In that case, there were 3 who said no death. That's why it's so hard in this day and age to give somebody the death penalty, because the death penalty jurisprudence, death penalty trials have evolved. It used to be just a majority agreeing on death. Then it went to a plurality, and now you need all 12 jurors to agree on death to sentence somebody to death. And that's very hard to overcome when those jurors are weighing those aggravating factors against the mitigating factors: mental health history, family history, the good things about this person that he lived prior to committing these murders if convicted. And a lot of times jurors look at that mental health history and say, hey, we shouldn't be sentencing people to death if they're mentally ill. That's what happened to Nicholas Cruz.
Yeah. Wow, it's interesting. Let's talk about holiday parties. It's that time of year, DUIs.
That time of year. We see, in my profession, this time of year is very big on 1, DUIs, and 2, domestic violence. People get together at holidays. They have holiday parties, have a family over, have a couple drinks, and next thing you know, you're slapping your brother or sister around. The police are coming out to your house, and somebody's going to jail for domestic violence, and we see it a lot.
Is that true that if they come, most of the time somebody's going because we got called?
Now, well, look at the Gabby Petito case, right? We're seeing what happened there, that the Moab Police Department is being sued because they didn't arrest Gabby Petito.
Yeah.
I mean, originally they determined that she was the person who was the aggressor in the fight. And they said, we're going to separate you guys, send you on your different ways. And unfortunately, after that circumstance, she was killed by Brian Laundrie.
Yeah.
And law enforcement, they come out to the scene, now they're doing things that, maybe they don't have to do, but they want to protect themselves, they want to protect their departments, and they want to protect the individuals who may be the victim. So in my experience, law enforcement comes out, it's a report of domestic violence, somebody's going to go to jail.
Yeah.
And majority of time, it's not the person who called 911.
Yep.
And the majority of time, it's the person who is accused, and a lot of time it's the man. We have a circumstance where, husband and wife, they get in a fight, it's not a big deal, a couple pushing, neighbor hears screaming, someone in the house hears people get upset, and 911's called. And they may say, hey, we don't want anyone going to jail, but the police, a lot of times, if they have the evidence that there's probable cause, they're not just going to separate you. Somebody's going to go to jail. You're going to spend the night in jail. You're going to be held on no bond until you get in front of the judge the next morning, and that judge makes a determination on if you should be released. And not only is the judge determining if you should be released or not, that judge is determining whether or not there should be contact between you and your spouse. You could have a great 25-year marriage and have a circumstance where things got out of control and somebody called the police for whatever reason, whether it happened or not, and then not be able to go to your own house because of the circumstance. So at the holidays, obviously, if you're in a domestic situation, it's important to get an attorney right away. Don't think because, hey, my wife doesn't want me prosecuted or my husband doesn't want me prosecuted, that the state's going to drop the charges. That's not how it works.
Right.
The charges belong to the state attorney's office once an arrest is made. The charges belong to law enforcement once 911 is called. And you may not want that person to go to jail. You may just say, hey, I called the police to get him away from me. Somebody's going to jail.
Wow.
And just because the other party doesn't want the charges dropped, it doesn't mean the state's going to drop the charges.
Yeah. Now, also, there's a different dynamic as well if you're having to defend yourself with a gun, right? So what are some of your top tips around that?
Well, look, without a doubt, one of the biggest things I handle is stand your ground cases. And it doesn't just apply to, what we see in the theater shooting case, for instance, where we saw on my case I handled recently, where we're shooting out in front of Bello. There's, standard ground applies to any time you use force against somebody. And if you have the reason to believe that you're going to be attacked in a place where you have the right to be, you have the right to meet force with force, including deadly force, if you feel you're going to be the victim of a serious bodily injury, if you're going to be killed, or the victim of a forcible felony. And in those circumstances, you don't have to retreat. And that's the biggest thing with stand your ground. It's what's called stand your ground. You could stand your ground without retreating and meet force if you believe you're going to be attacked. Now, you can use non-deadly force if someone's going to punch you and you feel they're coming back and you hit them first. That's a circumstance where you can use non-deadly force, where we don't see those on the headlines. But stand your ground can be applied to any case where you've used force against somebody based upon the belief that you're going to be attacked or victimized as a crime. And, you know, we live in a society, in a country where people have the right to defend themselves. I don't have to get punched in the face or stabbed or shot before I use that force first.
Right.
And with the firearm, if you have reason to believe you're going to be killed, and it has to be a real reason.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between self-defense, stand your ground, and retaliation. You know,
Right.
I teach my son all the time, hey, Dad, can I hit this person? Oh, look, that, you can't go after. That's retaliation. You can't chase somebody down.
Right.
But if you see a punch coming at you, that's defense.
Right.
So it has to be. There's a difference between retaliation and self-defense.
Yeah.
There's a difference between self-preservation and going out and getting back at somebody because you just got hit.
Yeah.
If the force that's going to be used against you is imminent, then you can use reasonable force to prevent that attack, either if it's real or perceived.
Right.
And that's the thing with stand your ground. It's a perception.
Right.
You know, if I perceive you're going to throw this pen at me, hit me, I can use force.
Well, especially if it's a bigger person or they're muscular, or they, you know, because one punch could knock an old person out or anybody out, right? I mean, so that's where you see that. Thanks for describing that for us. Anthony Rickman online, Rickman Law Firm.
RickmanLawFirm.com, 813-999-0502. Holiday DUIs, don't drink and drive. If you get pulled over, call me, 813-999-0502, TheRickmanLawFirm.com.
Awesome. Good stuff. All right, coming up, Martine Gramatica on the Consumer Quarterback Show, Lifeguard Imaging. Martine Gramatica coming up.
Thanks for listening to my daddy's show. Please make sure to send him all of your real estate deals and subscribe to the Consumer Quarterback Show podcast on iTunes and Spotify, or check out our YouTube channel.